Hi guys, welcome back to Bridges Bookshop, and have we got a rare one for you today. I don't know if you caught any of my previous videos. So my previous one to this was about the tortoiseshell binding prayer book. If you haven't seen that, check it out, very interesting. This is the second book that I'm going to show you now that's just as rare actually. Let me grab it for you. It is called, I've got to be very careful with this one. I'm going to show you on the screen first, just so you can kind of see for yourselves. I'm just going to explain why this is rare, and I'll put some screenshots up as well so you can have a good read. But I can never pronounce it correctly. Miscegenation. I've tried many times to pronounce this correctly. I'm not getting it right. Miscegenation. Anyway, that is a term created by the co-authors of this book to describe the theory of the blending of the races. Right, so this is an old American Civil War pamphlet, which is actually fake news. It's considered a literary forgery, and it was created to antagonize white people into believing Abraham Lincoln was pushing for the blending of the races. This was designed to antagonize the white people in America. During the presidential campaign, they implied that Abraham Lincoln believed in this theory, and that if they were to vote Abraham Lincoln in again, this was going to happen. By fake news, what somebody did, an editor of a newspaper in New York called The World, so an editor, a managing editor, and a reporter called, the managing editor was David Goodman Crowley, and reporter George Wakeman, who were anonymous at the time of creating this, implied that this was a genuine piece of literature that positively put across white people and black people having relationships and so on and so forth. What we consider absolutely fine today, back then was very, they didn't like it, unfortunately, as we well know. So because a lot of people didn't like the idea of that, remember slavery, the abolishment of slavery, Abraham Lincoln, all of that American history, the Civil War, everything to do with that, hot potato at the time, real big issues. So imagine you're a white person sitting in your little house in America, and then you come across this pamphlet and you read amongst it all these wonderful reasons why the blending of the races is fantastic for America, and what it alludes to is that there will be eventually just one entire mixed race. So this is really for white supremacists. No, oh my God, this is horrendous. So to whip it all up, make it seem genuine, make it seem like Abraham Lincoln agreed with it. It was anonymous. People believed it, and it was really very close to being endorsed by Abraham Lincoln. They tricked him. They sent him one of these copies, tried to get him to endorse it. I think he saw through it. He knew it was inflammatory. I mean, when you read some of the contents of this book, like I say, what I'll do is I'll put a few photos up here, there and everywhere of the contents page. If you just read the contents page, some of the titles of the chapters gives you a clue to kind of why it would be inflammatory. I mean, I've put a few little bookmarks in here they weren't a fan of the Irish, has to be said. So they tried to be quite insulting in how they describe the Irish. It's really hard for me to kind of show you. And they did the same with the Native Americans. They described them in a quite a negative way, in the view to eventually blending with white people would remove the negative aspects of these races. Like I say, it's a unpleasant time. I'd like to think we've moved on, but you know, it still exists in some fashion, unfortunately. So again, the chapter here, the future, no white, no black. Again, you can imagine a white man sitting in his home with his darling wife and children, and he's going, oh my goodness me, what does this mean? I can't believe it. You can see why it's whipped it all up. And it was fake. It was fake news. It purposely created by this newspaper, The World, by its chief editor and reporter, who were working on behalf of the Republican Party. Could be wrong. Is it Democrats? I don't know. I'm not 100% clued up in American politics. But whatever was the rival party to Abraham Lincoln had a direct involvement with this. They thought it was fantastic. Obviously, it's going to rally the troops, so to speak, against Abraham Lincoln. So yeah, it's a difficult one. They actually do mention in a chapter within the book, there we go, the miscegenation, Google it, you'll see how it's pronounced. Miscegenation in the presidential contest. So, you know, they've actually put a section in there purposely to wind them up. They've got some testimonies from well-known people of the day who were tricked, I believe, into endorsing this work. Again, so we've got the native Indian blood mingling with the white. You know, it's yeah. So anyway, so this is very rare. So what happened was in 1863, this was produced in America. This is the first UK edition, printed a few months later in 1864. Exceptionally rare. Not many copies about. It's considered one of the most unheard of but most elaborate examples of a hoax in American history, and it really gives a good example to kind of you see where we're at today with the modern media today, and the media, the fake news, the social media, the fake news, distorted truths, things being taken out of context and stuff. I mean, this was 1863. And look where we are now. It's really relatable. Some of it makes for unpleasant reading. It's purposely tongue-in-cheek in parts. It's inflammatory language in parts. But let me just check to make sure I've not missed anything. It's a lot to remember. So yeah. So where are we at now? Okay, that's one last thing I did forget to mention. So I've talked about the contents of the book, how rare the book is. It's very nice. It's in its original publisher's cloth binding, with the title across there. I've gone through a bit of the contents. Like I say, I'll add some photos in amongst some close-ups of the contents and some of the titles of the chapters. But actually, something else that's quite interesting about this particular edition is previous ownership. Yeah, we got a purple stamp and an inscription there. I'll just try and read what we found about the previous owner, who is actually, so he was a Berlin-based individual. So this was dated 1951, the inscription and the purple stamp. So it's made its way over to Germany. in 1951. So probably a little bit before then. So I think everybody knows what was going on in Germany around the 1940s. Wasn't great. And you can kind of see why the contents of this book might have been inflammatory. So we all know Hitler's point of view when it comes to the Aryan master race. So something like this, if it was believed to be a true representation of the American people's kind of thoughts with the mixing of the races, obviously that didn't sit well with Hitler. But before Hitler came into power, this Berlin-based individual, Ulrich von Beckerath, is the man inscribed in this book and stamped. The only information we can find about him, he was actually a German libertarian activist, which is fascinating, really. So he potentially had this book. Well, he did have this book. He owned this book. And he probably believed the contents, because this is only, not recently, but not long after kind of the early 1900s, I think, that this was discovered to actually be fake. The authors eventually came out and admitted to it, because obviously they were anonymous to begin with. So they came out, they admitted to it, but I'm not sure that once the publication was printed and copies sent all around the place, how common was it for people to actually find out it was a forgery, a literary forgery, a hoax. So people could be reading this and thinking, oh yeah, that's great, this could be the future, this is the future. He's read it, he's a German libertarian activist, he's going fantastic. And he was a co-creator of an association called the Cosmopolitan Union. This was in Germany, which was disbanded during the 1930s due to Hitler's rise to power. So yeah, he also, in the 1952, the year following the inscription in the book, he was associated with the libertarian Microfiche publishing project. So there we have it. How it got over to the UK, I couldn't tell you. I've got no idea whatsoever. But it's fascinating, very rare, a difficult read, but an important one, especially for our American friends. A very important piece of Civil War history, very hard to come by. First UK edition, printed 1964. So I hope you find that fascinating. I'll, like I say, put some pictures up, maybe a bit more detail in the description. If you've got any questions about this particular book, you can always drop me a comment in the comment. In the comment section, I'll try to respond to you. Or you can just Google it. You know, there's some articles, actually it's Wikipedia. If you put in Miscegenation, terrible. The Miscegenation, that word, if you type that in, that title word with hoax following it, you'll come up with all kinds of articles about it. It's fascinating. So we saw this. I thought, oh wow, well, I've never seen anything. Read the contents of it. I thought, wow. And it turns out, yeah, it's quite a rare piece. So it's another one of examples of one of the books we have in our collection. I hope you've enjoyed learning about the book. Like I say, I like to share these things. You don't see them very often. You probably won't see another one like it. Please don't forget to check out our other videos. Like I say, previously we talked about the tortoiseshell binding. We've talked about the use of white gloves in the book dealing industry. And just the first video was an introduction to British Bookshop. So if you could like, share, comment, whatever you'd like to do. The next video, I'm hoping to discuss with you about another fascinating book that we have, with covers come from reclaimed wood from a abbey in Scotland that is supposedly the final resting place of William Wallace of Braveheart, Mel Gibson fame. But again, the next video I'll be going into detail about this particular edition. So don't forget to subscribe to us. You'll get notified when we upload that video. Okay, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you, goodbye.